you very much for joining us today. It's Friday, and we are continuing to keep our spirits up and our connections strong. My name is Dan Hurley. I am a director and the chair-elect for the Vancouver Island Economic Alliance. I'm also principal of the Hurley Martin Group. We are a new consulting and training partnership focused on public engagement, government relations, philanthropy. And I'm pleased to be your host and moderator today. I first want to acknowledge the Coast Salish, Nuchalip, and Kwakiutl peoples on whose traditional lands we live and work. And today I'm speaking to you from Gabriola Island on the Nanaimo territory. I also want to thank MNP, who is our sponsor for today's session. We appreciate everyone joining us today. VIEA's mission, as many of you know, is to be a driving force for vibrant and a diverse island and Gulf Island economy. Our two major objectives are to unite and connect decision makers and to inform and add to the conversation on economic vitality in our region. VIEA's goal in hosting these video events is to bring together all of us in a common cause during this challenging time and to support each other now and to work collectively to prepare for the next step. We continue to see many daily announcements and reams of information coming from government and other sources that are intended to help support individuals, businesses, and communities during this pandemic. And the intent of this series is about presenting this information in a way that will help you to understand what it means for you and your organizations, and to take each of these topics into a single actionable piece. So before I introduce our presenter today, a few details. First of all, this is now our fourth session with Zoom, so we're starting to get used to the technology, as I'm sure many of you are. A few months ago, many of us may not have heard of Zoom, but now it's part of our daily life. But we're still getting used to the technology and how it works, so please do bear with us. Also, make sure that you join us. Oh, one second here. Sorry about that. You may experience some interruptions in our technology, so once again, please be patient with us. So the format of our presentation will be about 10 minutes, followed by about 10 minutes of questions and answers. To ask your questions, we ask you to use the chat box at the bottom of your screen and to simply open and type your questions. I will do my best to pose as many of those questions to our presenter as we can in the time that we have available. Finally, we ask everyone except the presenter and myself to keep your mutes on. With so many people participating, it will be difficult to follow the presentation if we have voices other than those that we have presenting today. So this time I'd like to welcome our speaker, Mike Dells, who is a business advisor and partner with MNP based in Nanaimo. He will be speaking today about the federal government's temporary wage subsidy for employers and some of the other measures intended to support business during this time. So hello, Mike, thanks for joining us, and I'll now hand the platform over to you for the next 10 minutes. Hello?
Oh, can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you now. Hello,
Perfect.
Mike.
It sounds like a cell phone communication. So
all learning experience, so go ahead.
Thanks so much, Dan, and thanks so much to VIEA for inviting us to present today. Yes, as you say, we're getting used to the technology and getting used to continuing to connect with folks and doing business through the online self-isolated world. So it's great to see you all here today. Welcome to my basement. So again, as Dan has kindly introduced, I'm taking the opportunity here today to talk about some of the federal government, specifically the wage subsidy items. And the disclaimer on this, of course, is that these are very new items. They're been presented by Prime Minister Trudeau and Finance Minister Bill Morneau to help provide some relief during this time. Of course, they continue to evolve legislation, and so you're going to need to stay up to date MNP, if you want to check out our website, we have COVID relief measures, a link directly on there to keep you continuously up to date. So, but right into the meat of it, the two things that I'm going to speak about today. The introduction says we're going to talk about the temporary wage subsidy. And while I was presenting on this week, last week, the release of a new wage subsidy and a more significant wage subsidy, and that's the Canada Emergency Wage Subsidy. So I'm going to speak about both of them because they're tied together. So first, let's roll right into it. The Canada Emergency Wage Subsidy is the most significant item. The goal for this is to prevent further job losses and encourage employers to rehire workers previously laid off or keep people working. We have an unprecedented level for applications to EI at this point, which is exactly what EI is for. But the goal is to keep businesses moving in whatever capacity they can. So that's what the goal is of this wage subsidy. Who's eligible? So eligible employers include individuals, taxable corporations, partnerships, nonprofit organizations, and registered charities. So basically anyone that is paying wages. Previous initial announcements excluded proprietorships and partnerships, but it's good to see that they've expanded that to include essentially all wage payers. Now here's the trick. Our first benchmark to hit is that we must be able to show evidence of experiencing a drop in gross revenues of at least 30% in March, April, or May when compared to the same month in 2019. Now, that's how they selected that figure. I believe it's on expectations of average gross margins of 30% for businesses, and assuming a 30% drop would still leave you with a break-even situation. I think it's a bit of an arbitrary number, and it's really going to be difficult to manage and monitor that. But that's our first hurdle that we have to get through, is that 30%. So program will be in place for a 12-week period from March 15th to June 6th. So we've got 12 weeks for which this coverage is. It's based on salaries or wages paid to employees. So this means that you've got to keep your wages going to be eligible for this. It's not a retroactive that says, yep, you're going to get dollars and cents for the wages that you did pay. It's dollars and cents for the wages that you are paying. The subsidy is at 75% of the first $58,700 normally earned by an employee. That represents a subsidy of $847 per week per employee. There's no limit on the amount that a subsidy that an eligible employer may claim, with the exception of course, the amount of the wages themselves. But if you've got 1,000 employees, you could be eligible for 1,000 times that $847 per week. Employers must make their best effort to top up employee salaries to bring them to pre-crisis levels. What does that mean as far as evidencing that? Again, details on how that is implemented in the program are not yet available. We're going to see review processes happening from Canada Revenue Agency to be able to monitor this. The big question is, how do we get it? So the indication is that it will be through an online portal that doesn't exist yet. So normally these benefit programs are rolled out over many months, and in some cases even over a year period from budget announcement to implementation. We're talking about doing this in a matter of weeks. So infrastructure from Canada Revenue Agency side, who is experiencing similar circumstances as ourselves, is going to be a little slower. But so stay tuned for the portal. While the program details are still being worked out, what is our recommendations for you to do right now? Sign up for the My Business account. I tried to get on a couple of times this morning and it was crashing continuously. So the first thing is to sign up for the My Business account. Just Google My Business account. The links are going to come up. If you haven't signed up for this previously, now is the time to do it, and it takes some time. This is where you'll also need your financial information. So pull out that last tax return package that you've got. Pull out your either incorporation documentation or your registration for your proprietorship partnership, because you're going to need those things handy. Now, previous to this circumstance where the application process for My Business account has been, is you go through the application process, they say, thank you very much, we're going to send you an access code in the mail. So given what our mail circumstance is, we haven't received any direction from Canada Revenue Agency yet that that application process has changed. So we're expecting to see access codes still coming in the mail. So, so that's why we recommend get signed up for that right now. The separate portal may have a better application process, but we don't know exactly what that looks like. And at this point, they're indicating that you're going to be able to access this through your My Business account. So that's probably your best point of recommendation is for that. And then the other one is once you've signed up for that, sign up for the direct deposit. I know lots of businesses have not previously signed up for the direct deposit options because of the fact that they're afraid Canada Revenue Agency can suck money out of your bank account. When you're signing up for that, you're specifically saying Canada Revenue Agency can put money into your bank account. And if any of you have experienced owing Canada Revenue Agency money for any extended period of time, you'll already know that they can take your money without the direct deposit. They know where your bank account is. So best thing to do to be able to avoid waiting for checks is to sign up for that direct deposit. And the other one, so sign up for the My Business account, sign up for the direct deposit, and get your books in order, because we expect there's going to be a process where we're going to have to submit some financial information to be able to apply for this, to meet that 30% drop metric, and for reporting on the wages that we're paying so that they can verify the application. So if your books aren't in order right now, you're going to want to be prepared to have that benchmark piece to say, here's where we were at in March, April, or May last year. Here's where we're at in March, April, and May this year. This is where our 30% drop is. And there's going to be other metrics to be met, including dealing with businesses that weren't even in business back in March, April, or May 2019, but are still experiencing some of those economic impacts of this crisis. So, and the other one is, of course, keep tabs on the government programs. So, so that's the big one, is the 75%er. If you're not falling into that metric, the other one that's out there that was previously announced and was on the title slide for this one was the temporary wage subsidy for employers. This one, we don't have to apply for a process to access. I still recommend getting the My Business account set up, but really what this is it's a 10% of the wages that are paid. So 75% is better, but 10% is better than zero. And this is based on reducing your source deduction remittances. So as businesses, when we're paying payroll, you've got components of tax, CPP, and EI that you're withholding from your employees' paychecks, and you're sending that all into the government. For many of you, your first remittance will be that will be impacted will be on the April 15th remittance for your March wages. You can withhold up to 10% of the wages and just the tax portion, right? So remember, we still got to send in that CPP. We've still got to send in EI, because EI is going to need all the money it can get to support all the claims that are out there. And so 10% withholding on the wages up to the maximum of the tax withheld. Maximum is $1,375 per employee, $25,000 per employer. So that's one that you can implement yourself. You don't need to apply for it. You can continue deducting the CPP, EI, and tax as indicated, and you calculate the subsidy yourself. And so this is going to be taxable income. We're going to have to pay tax on it at the end. And the other significant item to remember is that that the temporary wage subsidy is going to reduce any of the Canada emergency wage subsidy that you get. So there's going to be a reporting component there that says, okay, we've applied for the 75%. We don't get to stack the 10% on top of that again. It'll be application for the Canada emergency wage subsidy, less anything we've taken on the temporary wage subsidy. So lots of complexity in reporting and application process, but these are a couple of programs that the government has out there that should be able to provide some level of relief. For most businesses, no level of relief is going to be enough to entirely offset the economic impact of our circumstances, but these are some of the things that the federal government has come out with. Hopefully that's helpful for you.
Well, thanks very much, Mike. Are you able to see me and hear me?
I can indeed.
Awesome, good. So we'll now welcome we'll now welcome our participants to start entering their questions via the chat function at the bottom of your screen. I will start with a question just with respect, and I think you've explained it fairly well, but just to clarify, for smaller businesses like sole proprietorships or partnerships with a small number of employees. In terms of the wage subsidy, would this not apply to them? Are they to look primarily at the CRB, or is this something that they could consider?
Yeah, great question. It's definitely going to apply to anyone who is paying the wages specifically. So, so if you're an individual who is a proprietorship or a partnership that is not paying wages, this is your remuneration part. That's where the Canada Emergency Response Benefit comes in. That's that $2,000 per month. And so that's a different application process. Essentially, if you're no longer able to work because of sickness or care for another individual who is sick, or if you've got to stay home or can't work due to the fact that you've got kids who, because just like my kids, they're running around the house right now. It would be difficult to be in the office, and so those circumstances are going to make you eligible for the Canada Emergency Response Benefit, that $2,000 a month. Not going to help you out from the wage subsidy perspective, because both of these programs are for trying to continue to pay wages.
Great. I'm just might be just again a function of the Zoom system here, but I haven't been receiving questions directly here. I'll just give us a minute. Okay, one right now. So, as a business owner, can I apply for this wage subsidy as I'm working developing our online business? I have laid off my employees. I may be bringing a number of them back as I develop the online business. We've had more than a 30% drop.
Yeah, absolutely. You would be able to qualify for that when the employees come back. So again, if you've laid off your employees, you don't have the wage cost. So they're not. So the intent of these government programs is to compensate you for keeping people working. If you've laid them off, the government's already paying them through the EI program. With any luck, they qualify for that, or through the Canada Emergency Response program. If you bring them back, immediately that's the time when you're going to be able to apply for it. So it's not necessarily that you're going to have to defend all of those pre-wages. Again, through that application process, there's going to be questions that we're going to have to respond to with regards to what were your pre-crisis wages versus your post-crisis wages. The indication from the federal government is that they're going to be accommodating some of these variations from the initial announcements. They haven't even worked out all the details of how they're going to deal with those metrics of what was your business like before, what your business is like after. Minister Morneau has stated that they want to be able to accommodate different circumstances outside of this prior year to current year 30%, or prior month wages to current month wages. We just don't know what they're going to do from an implementation perspective. But my expectation is, and all indications are, is that you're going to be paying people that you wouldn't be able to otherwise, then you're going to be able to qualify for some relief.
Okay, great. I'm starting to get the questions, so thank you. And if you do have a question, please address it to me under your chat function, Dan Hurley. The next question, could you go over the 10% wage subsidy again? Is it savings? It is savings on income tax up to 10% of the wage?
Yeah, really interesting, that one. And again, this is our easy one to apply for. So let's say, for example, you're writing your normal gross wages to an employee would be $4,000. So you're continuing paying that individual the $4,000. First metric is on that temporary wage subsidy, 10% of that wage, so $400 cash in your jeans. And normally what you would do is you would have a $4,000 wage, you'd hold back X amount, call it $1,000 for tax, CPP, and EI on that individual. Let's say $600 of it is tax, so that would be enough. You would keep $400 of that $600 withholding tax, keep that in your bank account. So that's where the dollars actually hit the company bank account. And the other $200 of tax plus the CPP and EI still goes to the federal government. We've still got to make our source deduction remittances, but that's how the dollars get into your pocket. Now, in that previous example, let's say the withholding tax was only $300. So that's the tax component of your source deduction. If it's only $300 and your gross wage is $4,000, you don't have enough withholding tax to get all of that 10% of that gross wage. So you only get the $300 withheld. So this is where that owner-manager remuneration decision comes in. Maybe you increase your tax component of your withholding to be able to get the whole 10%. Definitely some management to be done there, but that's how the dollars get in your jeans.
Okay, this is a pretty specific question here, Mike. So for the 10% temporary wage subsidy, what date is it in effect?
Yeah, great question. So that's going to be basically essentially on the initial implementation date of that. So it's going to be March 15th. So for the wages paid in March.
And it's currently in effect till June the 6th, is that correct?
That one actually is up to June 20th. Pardon me, to be specific, sorry, I mentioned March 15th. It was actually March 18th. So the remuneration paid from March 18th to June 20th. Why they have slightly different dates than the Canada Emergency Wage Subsidy, I don't know, but that's the one that's out there.
Okay, next question. Can you apply for direct deposit for a client if you represent a client?
Unfortunately, you cannot apply through a represent client for direct deposit. Individuals are going to have to do that through their My account, and businesses are going to have to do that through their My Service Canada account. There is a process to be able to send in an application. Canada Revenue Agency still operating on fax from that perspective. So if you're filling out a document for them, you've got to fax it in. Otherwise, individuals doing that through my account, corporations or businesses through My Business account, and or through tax filing services. So if you haven't filed the latest, greatest tax return, there's a T1DD form that gets filed with personal taxes. That's a way to access it, or through the corporate tax returns as well.
Obviously, the 75% subsidy is tied into revenues. However, some companies may continue to generate more than 70% of revenues, but may end up with huge unpaid receivables. Do you think the government may consider this?
I would like to think that the government is going to consider the working capital implications of businesses. And again, you may have been in the startup phase where you might have double the revenue that you had last year, but be making less money. Why they've picked this 30% drop it feels to me like a bit of an inappropriate metric. But that's a political item to be dealt with, and now to be dealt with on the implementation side. The Finance Committee has been meeting over the last couple of days to iron out the details. I would definitely expect, and certainly our businesses have provided that feedback, that gross revenue is probably a pretty poor metric. I would be thinking we should be looking at cash flow metrics, or at the very least some net income metrics.
Okay. As far as you know, is the revenue test applicable to each individual corporation as opposed to an associated group of companies?
Yeah, that's a great question as well. At this point, we're receiving indication that it is on an individual business by business basis, but that's one of the questions that's still out there, is whether associated group, if you could chop up your business into 6 different corporations, could you get 6 times the subsidies? I guess theoretically that's possible, but I would expect that there is going to be some caveats put on there to limit from an association, as are many of the other benefits that are out there from the government, small business deduction. Those all have association tests. So I think there's probably a reasonable expectation that there would be an association test here to avoid that duplication inappropriately.
Okay, this may have been answered, but I'll ask it anyway. When looking at the 30% drop in financials, year-over-year financials, what are we supposed to measure? Cash flow or invoice? But probably unpaid invoices. Yeah,
so the indication is that the accounting figures to be provided, so your gross revenue figures, are based on our generally accepted accounting practices or accounting standards for private enterprises, specifically in most circumstances. So general accounting standard would say you would do it on an accrual basis. So if you've earned the revenue, if it's on accounts receivable, it would be on that basis as opposed to a cash basis.
Okay, in terms of the 75% wage subsidy, are the employees required to work a minimum number of hours per week, or can we leave them on the payroll until we have work for them?
Yeah, we don't have an indication that there is minimum hours at this point. That may be one of the metrics that evolves, but the intent is just to try to keep people going. So I mean, there are some pieces on the EI program, work share programs that are out there as well for reduced hour pieces. But at this point, the indication is that 75% would be based on any amount that you could pay from a payroll perspective. So even if you're down to 10%, you're still paying people. It looks like you should still be eligible for some subsidy. The indication is on the releases that employers need to be making the best attempt to keep employees at pre-crisis level wages. What that best attempt metric looks like, we don't yet know. And for most businesses, that's not going to be, or in many businesses, pardon me, that's not going to be able to be sustained. So the hope is that the relief will still be provided.
Okay. We have about 5 minutes left and lots of questions, so I'll try to get to as many as I can. If you are an owner shareholder that takes a regular salary, does this amount qualify for the 75% relief?
Yeah, thank you for that. As long as you're still on the wage piece. So, one of the things is as these metrics come out, perhaps shareholders that would have been previously taking remuneration via dividends versus via wages, you may be out of luck. Particularly if it was in a circumstance where you're the only employee, so you didn't have a payroll account, that may be a difficult one to argue. There's no indication that this remuneration is going to be on a dividend basis, because of course then that applies to a wide range of shareholder remuneration. So this is going to be for work. You've got to have had a payroll account, and you've got to have had wages. So this is where we've got a really narrow opportunity to say, you know what, we've got owner managers who were paying themselves just by a draw basis and then declaring it sometime later. You may want to do some additional reporting, send in some of that CPP for yourself, and do that by the April 15th remittance deadline, so you get into this qualification piece.
Here's another question for a new business. Our business opened in June 2019, so no comparable for those months. What would you suggest we do?
Yeah, great question. Again, the Ministry of Finance has given some indication that they recognize that this is an unidentified area. First thing I would suggest is make sure you've got your books in order. We're going to have some conversations around trending. What was your revenue trend looking like from your date of inception to now? Perhaps the 3 months prior, looking at it. Again, I think these are going to be some difficult conversations that finance is having as far as how we compensate businesses, because as we know, many businesses don't have this flatline trend. We don't see the same level of revenue every month, and our metric, again, feels like it shouldn't be gross revenue. It should be based on what the actual impact of the crisis has been on your business. And so being able to be prepared for that conversation. But the first thing is having your books in order on a month-by-month basis, so that we can show some of that trending and make the case that we do have a need for relief, and we're experiencing some financial hardship as a result of the crisis.
So Mike, on that, just in response to that question, will that be a conversation that CRA, you expect the CRA will have with either business owners directly or filing, or through agencies like yourself?
Yeah, we would expect that's going to be part of the application process. And you know what, it's going to be really difficult for Canada Revenue Agency to manage this, given all of the other programs that they're trying to manage. I don't expect this application process to be a smooth process for anyone who isn't falling into these square boxes that they've laid out for us. As soon as you're outside the scope for that, it might be a bit of a battle to get the cash. And so that's where businesses are encouraged to look at some other cash flow management pieces until this program can be rolled out appropriately. My thoughts are, if you're not falling into one of the boxes, you're going to be 6 to 8 weeks before you can see a check, because there's going to be some hoops to jump through. And this is where you want to have some conversations with your financial institution. There are a number of loan programs out there that are available that might be able to bridge the gap to when these relief measures come out and your immediate cash flow needs.
So just related to that, so speaking of a business might be out of the box, I am a pre-revenue tech company. Has the government addressed this for the wage subsidy?
Unfortunately, nothing addressed at this point for pre-revenue type businesses. And again, you're going to be one of those out of the box ones where we're going to have to be able to, it's going to be like applying for a grant. So if you're in a pre-revenue stage, applying for grants, applying for financing, how is it that you're making an argument for the business circumstances? And that's definitely specific circumstances that are impacted. If you've been paying wages though, that's the key metric. Have you been paying wages in this pre-revenue state? And if you have been, I think you've got a good shot at being able to receive some funding. It's just going to be how they deal with this gross revenue test.
Okay, this one's going to be the last question because we're just about out of time. If I'm trying to still run a business, but it is not making enough money to cover expenses or bring staff back, would I be eligible for the $2,000 Canada Emergency Response Benefit?
Yeah, my impression is, and again, it's case specific, but yes, yeah, the indication is that that's exactly the circumstance that the Canada Emergency Response $2,000 a month benefit is for those individuals who are in need of relief, who have been in the circumstance where they have been an active part of the economy. You might not have been making profit, but you were generating economic activity previously. That's how you're feeding yourself. And then that's how you're going to be able to be receiving some benefit is through that Canada Emergency Response Benefit.
Okay. Well, there's many, many more questions on here, and we'll hopefully try to capture some of those afterwards and try to get some answers. But as you've said, Mike, and we've said over, a lot of this is changing by the day, and so I think the short answer is continue to be as patient as you can be as we get some more clarity on these things. So, Mike, thank you very much for joining us today. Really appreciate your direct advice and your response to these questions, as well as support from MNP.
Thank you for the opportunity to assist where I can. You know, we're all going to have to get through this together. So, but in the first things first, everyone stay safe, stay healthy out there. We're going to get on the other side of this from an economic basis, and hopefully some of these things have helped to be able to get to the other side. Great.
Well, thank you, Mike. And a reminder to please continue to watch VIEA's news announcements about the series, and for more information on measures that can help you. We expect to offer more of these sessions at various times, depending on availability of speakers. And on that note, our next session is next Tuesday, April the 7th at 11:30 a.m. And our speaker at that time will be Katie Bishop of TD Canada Trust. And Katie is also a board member with VIEA. And she will be speaking about how to manage loan and mortgage payments during this crisis. So please do join us for that. And we're going to have other topics as well. And if you have suggestions or ideas for those topics, please send them to us. Maybe I'll give George's email, george@viea.ca, to provide your suggestions. And of course, if you haven't already signed up, please sign up for our e-news through our webpage at viea.ca. So thank you very much. These recordings will also be available on our webpage, so feel free to watch them again or share them with your network. So until next time, please keep good company while continuing in isolation. Please stay connected, and all the best to you. Stay healthy, wash your hands, don't touch your face. Have a great day.